everyone, Clea here, and we are starting the April reading vlog. I'm looking a little bit disheveled. I am like fighting a cold, and so I'm hoping it goes away because I have like a headache that's building and that I'm hoping will not burst through, but it's iffy at the moment. But so, for April, it is the 2nd of April when I'm filming this, and I have finished the book yesterday. So yesterday I finished Cushiel's Chosen by Jacqueline Carey. Obviously I had already read the majority of that in the month of March, so I got to the 79% mark on the 31st of March, and so I finished on the 1st of April. So this is the sequel to Cushiel's Dart. In this one we're looking at our protagonist called Phèdre, who is born with a sort of like red spot in her eye, and basically this red spot marks her as a sort of like a god's chosen, and the god who has chosen her is basically the god of pain, the god of justice, of punishment. And she's early on recruited into the household of this guy called Delaunay, who is basically sort of like spy master, you can say. Now Phèdre is trained as a courtesan and as a spy, and so the anticipation or the expectations that I had set myself for this series were running in a particular way. I was expecting it to be, you know, focus a lot on that sort of like courtesan side of things and being, as a result, somewhat more like romantic, though, you know, there's not necessarily romance involved with courtesans, but I was expecting it to run a little bit more on the romance side of things, and I was totally proven wrong in that. This is definitely a lot more on the political side of things, or the strategical side of things. Mainly in both the first book and in the second book, there is always a sort of like massive plot that Phèdre will have to sort of try to unravel and try to prevent from taking place. And so with the book, and with the first book, for example, by the third of the way in, the sort of like plot takes a shift, and like I was immediately much more intrigued because I was immediately like, ooh, this book is definitely not going in the direction that I had anticipated in. So it was surprising me in that sense, and I always like for books to surprise me. The second book, I enjoyed it more, I believe, than the first one, just because I'm already acquainted with this world, I'm already acquainted with these characters. It was much more quick for me to kind of get invested, even though I wouldn't say like the beginning of the first one was torture or difficult for me to get through neither, but it just felt like a smooth transition into the second book for me. I feel like the second book as well is much more structurally sound, so to speak. In the first book, I definitely towards the latter third or so started to feel like tired of it to some extent, started to feel like it was okay for it to start wrapping up, and it just kept on adding and adding. And even here I would say that I also kind of felt like there's this big like end sequence, sort of, so to speak, and then we continue past that for another big end sequence, kind of like the Lord of the Rings with the Return of the King having like these 5 endings, for example. This also has multiple endings, and so past that first ending I also did feel like I was losing some of my patience towards the second ending. But aside from that, I'm still enjoying it. I like these characters. Jocelyn, I love the character of Jocelyn, and yeah, I will definitely still continue on. They are sort of like, I'm not entirely sure whether they're like 4 stars or not. I think they are 4 stars because I definitely enjoy them enough, and I enjoy them more than enough, but there's something about the writing style that just doesn't fully, like, it's not fully my thing. There's something about the narration in particular, the narrative voice, which just isn't my thing, but I do enjoy the plot a whole lot. So yeah, I'm definitely still happy to continue on reading. I don't know, because it's kind of hinted at that we might get a like massive time jump of about 10 years. I don't know how I feel about that yet, but yeah, I will be reading the third book in May, so we will have my thoughts then, I guess. Hey guys, I just filmed another video, so I thought it would be the perfect time to give you guys an update about my April reading, because I did not do so in a little bit already. So let's just go and check what I finished, because I think I've only talked about Cushiel's Chosen so far. Alright, so second book that I finished this month is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This is the first book in the Bone Shard? The Drowning Empire. This is the first book in the Drowning Empire series. The third book is coming out next month. I will not be up to date by that time, but I really enjoyed this one. This one just like, I don't know, it had like perfect pacing for me. I enjoyed the world, I enjoyed the characters. It had like a lot of elements that I just really enjoy about a fantasy. So in this one we are looking at multiple perspectives. Let's just look at the two main ones, I guess. So we have Lynn, who is the daughter of the emperor. However, her relationship with her father isn't really ideal. She doesn't have a mother anymore, and you know, she at some point suffered some sort of an illness that made her lose her memories, and it seems like her father doesn't consider her to be whole until she retrieves some of those memories. Her father also keeps a very strong control over the palace, more so to speak. So this palace has all of these doors, but you know, Lynn kind of has to earn the keys to open the doors, and she kind of comes up with an alternate plan for that. Secondly, we are looking at a smuggler called Joven, who is basically just going about his business. He has this sort of like debt that he incurred with a sort of like criminal society, and so he's trying to recover enough money to be able to pay them back. However, he's also the type of character who cannot like step away from certain situations and who finds himself doing good where he wasn't really planning to. Along the way he encounters a sort of like weird animal that he hasn't seen before, and that just annoyingly doesn't seem to want to leave his side. So we have an animal companion. In this world, as the title indicates, there is bone shard magic, meaning that every citizen of the empire basically has to give up a bone that is like behind their ear. So when they come of a certain age, basically these bones are harvested and sent off to the emperor, who can then build these sort of like constructs with them. And so I really enjoyed that world building aspect and that sort of bone magic. And this book I really enjoyed a whole lot. I love the animal companion, I love Joven and Lynn. There are three more perspectives that to some extent interested me less, but still with all of these perspectives I had a good time, and I was just like flying through it, and the end of this book definitely made me go like, oh, I want to continue, I want to know what happens next. And this was a book that I was reading for the Howling Pack book club, hosted by Sasha from The Wild Sasha, and we had such a long discussion about it because there are so many questions that are left unanswered, which I absolutely love, because I love, like, I don't want them to give me the answers straight away. I want to be able to speculate on them, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these answers potentially given in the second book already, but I'm sure that we'll be left with many questions unresolved as well. But so that one I absolutely enjoyed, had a great time with this one. Next thing that I finished is A Dead Gin in Cairo by P. Jelly Clark. This is a short story, let's mostly say, so it's a fantasy short story. There are 3 short stories in this universe, and then there's a full-length fantasy novel. And so this fantasy novel is on the Howling Pack book club for April. So I'm reading these short stories now to be able to prepare for reading that one later in the month. So A Dead Gin in Cairo is the first one in this series. So we're looking at a detective who basically has a case to crack. Basically an angel, I want to say, but I'm not entirely sure anymore whether it was an angel or like a djinn. I think it was a djinn. Yeah, a dead djinn in Cairo. A djinn is found dead, and so she needs to discover like what the hell is going on. This is a little bit of a steampunk world, and while murder mystery typically is a plot element that does nothing for me, it doesn't interest me at all, here it didn't, like, it's not like I was interested in figuring out who was a murderer, but I was interested in the world building a lot, because there's this sort of like talking of jinns, of ghouls, of angels, and like figuring out how all of these elements come to play within this imagined world was really interesting in my opinion. So I did have a good time with this short story. I did really enjoy the protagonist as well. I'm hoping that this is I also believe that this is the protagonist that we'll be looking at in the novel Master of Jinn later on, and so it gives me great hope for Master of Jinn. Next thing that I finished is a sequel, which was supposed to be on my March TBR as well, and that is Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, second book in the First Law series. I mean, I cannot really give you a great synopsis for the First Law series. I'm just going through the motions with this one. I feel like it's supposed to be grimdark, though I will say that, like, I don't find this to necessarily be so much grimmer or darker than some other fantasy books that I've read. But that just basically means it's a gloomy world, it doesn't shy away from violence, there is a lot of sort of like darker thematic to it, it's definitely not like joyous to read about. And we are following a couple of characters within this world. We're following Logan, who is a northerner who I think at the beginning of the first book was kind of like left almost to die. Then we have Glokta, who is an inquisitor who used to be sort of like champion, you know, like golden boy, who then got captured during a war, was tortured to the extent where he became a cripple, and then he became an inquisitor and is kind of loathed by everybody around him. And then we have, what is his name? Something with a J, something with a J. His name is not on here. Jesla? Something like that. Let's just call him Jesla for the time being, it's not his name. But yeah, he is like the new up and coming golden boy, let's say. So he was like training for some sort of a championship, but he's also quite lazy, quite full of himself, and a very obnoxious character, let me say. And so in this second one, we're continuing on from book one. That's all I can kind of say at this point in time. And as I said, I'm kind of going through the motions with this series. It's not like I dislike it, but I also have like zero intrigue when it comes to this. I don't care what happens to these characters. I like some of these characters a lot. I like Logan. There's another character, Pharaoh, in this book that I really start to enjoy. There's even a character that I disliked in the first one, I start to like more. And I know that everybody is like always like praising the character of Glokta, but the character of Glokta to me is like the least interesting character here. He just seems to me like pretty one-dimensional, you know, you get what you see with him. But yeah, the character of Glokta to me isn't all that interesting. But so yeah, I'm enjoying the series to some extent, but as I said, I have zero intrigue. I could just put this entire series down and never feel like I've unresolved business with it, except for like the completionist side of me. So I will still continue and finish the last book in this first trilogy, but I'm not entirely sure I will continue on to the second series or to the standalones in this universe. Next, we're gonna skip a book. I will have a video on the card that you can watch if you want to see me talk about this book. This is Stillborn by Guadalupe Nettel, which is a book that I read for the Booker International shortlist, hopefully, but long list at this point in time. And so I have a new vlog for that going on at this point in time. I'm currently taking a break for the peace talks for Realmaton, but after the weekend I'll get back to that vlog. And so that vlog will be up before this wrap up is up, and so I will have talked in depth about this book there, but highly recommend. It's my favorite book so far that I've read for the International Booker. I don't see it changing within this vlog, but who knows. And so then we get to Realmaton Peace Talk. So during this weekend my goal was basically to read as many short fantasy works that I have on my want to read list as possible. So I have not been doing great because it's also a gymnastics heavy weekend, so I've also been watching a whole ton of gymnastics. But so the first thing that I finished is a 15-page short story, The Angel of Khan el Khalili, which is another one of these short stories in the Djinn universe by P. Jelly Clark. This is a 15-page short story. I really cannot say much about it. We have this young girl who's basically on a mission to find a cure for her sister, and that's all I can say. I enjoyed it, but you know, it's 15 pages, you know, there's not much to it. I will be interested to see whether this ties in with Master of Djinn at some point in time, because it's a different character than the one that we were introduced to within the Djinn in Cairo, but maybe it's like set up for this angel character. Maybe we'll meet this angel again in Master of Djinn. And then the second one that I finished this weekend is The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Osi Utomi. This is the first book in the Forever Desert series. This just came out, so it's the only one currently available. But so this one is also a novella. It's 96 pages long, and whereas originally I was like not fully convinced about it, because I picked this one up because Sarah from Voyage Through Words gave it 5 stars, and originally I was like, meh, okay, yeah, like it's a good story and I'm enjoying it and it's like well constructed and all of that, but it's nothing like outstanding or anything like that. The ending definitely convinced me that otherwise, so it's definitely between the 4 and the 5 star range for me at this point in time, and because the ending, I didn't see it coming, and at this point in time, a lot of time I'm pretty good at seeing foreshadowing and realizing where an author is taking things, and so when something takes me by surprise, I really enjoy it a whole lot. And so in this one we're looking at our character. I finished it yesterday and I've already forgotten his name. Was this Tutu? I think Tutu, right? Yeah, Tutu. So Tutu lives in the City of Lies, and the City of Lies is a city that has one big problem, and that is that they don't have a source of water. So at some point in time when they were really struggling and people were dying of dehydration, this neighboring kingdom of the Ajungo came around to help them out. However, in exchange for water, they had to cut out their tongues. So at this point in time, for a few decades, maybe even already, at least a few years, people have been cutting out their tongues from the moment in which they turned 13, I believe, in exchange for water. However, the water that they were given still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to thrive off of. It's enough to kind of barely survive. Still, people are dying from dehydration because the water supply is unreliable. So at some point in time, all these young kids have been going out into the desert trying to look for water, but nobody has returned victorious. And so Tutu at one point in time decides that he will also make an attempt, because his mother is basically on the cusp of dying of dehydration, and so he feels like, I need to take this step. I can be the hero that my mother needs me to be. And so he sets out into the desert to try and find the solution, to try and find water. However, as is always said, there are no friends outside of the City of Lies. And so it's a dangerous mission. I won't say more than that, but yeah, I really enjoyed the resolution for this book. I really enjoyed the ending to it. Regardless of that, it is a nice story. It does touch upon a lot of like thematic that has to do with power dynamics, with, you know, the rich compared to the poor. You know, these are Jungo, they have water to spare, they have all the luxuries, they can kind of spill and waste water, whereas the neighboring kingdom of the City of Lies is basically dying of thirst. So it's talking about a lot of those dynamics between like the developed world and the underdeveloped world, for example. And you know, so a lot of that thematic I found very interesting, and then that ending was just like really well done. So yeah, I'm interested to see more of their works. I do believe that the other work that they currently have out is young adults, but I'll have to look into it a little bit more to figure out whether I want to try that or whether I will wait for the next book in this series, because it says on Storygraph first book in that series, so I'm sure that more will follow. But yeah, I really enjoyed it in the end. But so yeah, I am about to pick up the third novella or short story in the that Jin universe, so I'm gonna be reading The Haunting of Tramcar 15 now, and so then I will get back to my Booker International vlog after that. Last time I checked in with you guys, I think I was talking about The Lives of the Ajungo by Moses Ozi Utomi. So that same weekend, which was Peace Talks weekends for Realmathon, I finished 2 other books, and that was A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. So this is, what I did not realize is it's the first in a duology, or maybe even more than 2 books, but there are only 2 at least at this point in time. And if I had known that, maybe I wouldn't have gone in, I don't know. But it's another series I've now started. This is basically a series I wanted to start because of the fact that it has disability representation. So our protagonist has an incurable illness, and so she knows that, you know, she might die any moment now. Basically, I don't remember the disease or which age, like, is almost impossible to reach, but basically people with her condition don't typically reach adulthood. And so she knows that every year that she passes is just another gift that she's been given, but she knows that, you know, that day is coming. So definitely know going into it that it's going to talk about, you know, like difficult circumstances. And like many people growing up, she had her favorite Disney character. But unlike most people, her favorite Disney character was actually Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty coincidentally is also one of my favorite Disney movies. So for her birthday, her best friend throws her a Sleeping Beauty themed party, including a sort of like, not really a how do you call it, spinning wheel, but a spindle. And when she touches the spindle, she is transported to a parallel world where beautiful princess is about to touch a spinning wheel herself. Now, I mainly enjoyed this a lot for the disability representation, which is also why I went into it. I really enjoyed the discussions on disability and on, you know, coming to terms with her condition. A discussion related to disability that is very prominently featured within this one is kind of this sort of like look for a cure when there is no cure at the moment, and like how much does looking for a cure might take away from, you know, the enjoyment that you can have in the moment, considering how little of life she probably has. She at some point kind of had to make her parents stop looking for a cure for her, because it seemed like they were spending more time looking for a cure than they were actually spending time with their child, spending the time that they had with her in a quality way. And so the sort of whole discussion around the idea of a cure and, you know, spending hopes and time and energy on that is something that for me is an interesting topic to look at, and that I on my end have also kind of embraced as sort of like, you know, if one day in my life they develop a cure, then sure, I'll be very happy about that, but I don't want to be, you know, holding out hopes for that or spending my time thinking about what if they come up with a cure, what if they do this or that, when I know that the process of developing a cure for anything takes decades, for example. So that I found an interesting topic that was discussed within this one. I'm not entirely sure I like where this one ended up, but we'll see what the second book does with that. I would have kind of preferred for it to just be like a standalone, I think, with then a slightly different ending than the one that we got at this ending, at this point. But you never know. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I thought it was a fun ride with a very nice disability discussion in it. And so the second one might as well do the exact same. So we'll see when I eventually get to that. Next up, I finished Tramcar 015 by P. Jelly Clark. So this is the third short story before A Master of Gins. So in this one we are looking at a different detective, and he is put on a case that involves a haunted tram car. I mean, it's a short story, I really cannot say much more, but I did enjoy this short story. I just enjoyed it less than I enjoyed A Dead Gin in Cairo. But at this point in time, definitely all of these short stories gave me a lot of excitement for the world. I really enjoyed this world, I really enjoyed this setting, and the characters in it I definitely also like. They intrigued me to some extent, and the characters, you know, they intrigued me, so I was like willing to go into A Master of Gin and find out more about them and get more of a snippet of this world. But we weren't there yet, because that will be the final book that I read in April. Before that I still finished a few other things, and I went right back into my Man Booker Prize reading right after that. I don't remember whether I left my update for Stillborn out of my discussion. If I did, which I think I probably did, then I will also do the same for The Gospel According to the New World. You can find my thoughts on that in the vlog that I did specifically for reading the Man Booker International. But spoiler, it was not a great time. I severely struggled through this one. Probably should not have continued, but I persevered and it did not pay out. Next up we have the third 5-star read of the year for me, and it is actually no surprise because it was The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. So one of my first 2 5 stars of the read was Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, the first book in this trilogy, and so the sequel did not disappoint. In some sense the sequel is slightly less of a 5-star than the first one is, but you know, it still gave me that sort of like rush of excitement, the rush to want to keep on continuing reading, finding out more of what is taking place, what is happening, which is funny because people who don't like these books, like I know one person who doesn't like this book, Jess, I'm talking to you, she calls this like Ship of Boredom, and I'm like, But there's so much that happens in this one according to me compared to the other books, and it's definitely one that, you know, I was just constantly hooked and intrigued about where the story was going next. But so, Ship of Destiny, why do I keep saying just about Ship of Destiny? It's because it's the next one up, I guess, but Live Ship Traders, which is the name of the series, is a series that looks at this town called Bingtown, where there is this tradition of trading. They have these connections to people from a place called the Rainwilds, and basically through trade with the Rainwilds they are able to create live ships, and live ships are basically ships that come alive. The figurehead on the ship comes alive when 3 generations of its captains have died aboard the ship. And so this is about to happen at the start of book 1. Althea, her father, is about to pass away and leave the ship to her. However, there's a spanner in the works, and so things develop from there. I very much loved Mad Ship, and what I really loved about Mad Ship is that it changed my mind about the character. And having watched other people give their reviews of Mad Ship, I knew I was going to change my mind about the character. I just did not expect it to be this character. I did not expect to like this character at any point in time, and so I was kind of talking on Discord with some people about my experiences while reading it, and it went from me going like ugh whenever this character appeared to me at certain points in the book being like, what's happening? I've read a few chapters in this perspective and I'm not annoyed, or I'm not sighing whenever their name is spoken or whenever they say something. To me going, what just happened? I just read an inner mind passage of this character, and it's so beautiful, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, I went on a real journey with this, and Faith is now trying to lie underneath the tripod, which it's not possible. It's not an ideal situation for my cats, clearly, to have you guys there, but it is the better visual. But so, Mad Ship, absolutely loved it. I am very, like, the one thing that I find intriguing, especially about my experience with live ships, is that I know a lot of people say that the Rainwild Chronicles trilogy, which is like the 4th trilogy within this bigger universe that Robin Hobb has created, a lot of them say that that's a disappointment, but every time that I learn more about the Rainwilds, I just find myself more interested and more intrigued about the Rainwilds. So I'm interested to see what my experience will be with the Rainwild trilogy. So I'm interested to see what my experience with that will be whenever I get around to it. But so, another 5-star for me. Mad Ship, absolutely loved it, and so eager to dive into Ship of Destiny next month. So June. After Mad Ship, I finished 2 more things in a month, mainly for Magical Readathon, because I haven't put any information about like what these books were for, but basically I enjoy like doing readathons for myself, but I don't necessarily feel the need to share the prompts that I use these for, because once I've finished it I can't be bothered to look at that information again. But this one I definitely know why it was. So this is Animal Wife by Lara Ehrlich. I'm not entirely sure that's how you pronounce it, because I needed a book with a wolf on the cover and I didn't have any, and some other books on my like want to read have wolves on them, but they're like really long ones, and I was like, yeah, no, I already have too many long books. I cannot for the life of me prioritize something like this. I could have read like a 40-page picture book that Script had available to me, and to be fair I probably should have, because I decided to listen to the audiobook for this, which is a short story collection, but it was not for me, and I just was unable to pay attention to it at any point in time. Maybe this is the point in time in which I was starting to experiencing like focusing issues, because definitely that has been an issue for me in the beginning of May at this point in time. But so they're all stories about like women on the verge of adulthood. Like for example, one of them is like a story of children playing in the ocean, and then like of sort of like sexual awakening, I believe. There's this very weird short story in which a woman is like dressed as a deer in her garden, I believe, and then I believe she is doing the dirty with a stag. At which point I was like, wait, what? Because I was listening to it and I was like on the bike, so I couldn't pause it. But I was like, wait, what? What did I just hear? Did I just hear that correctly? And I did read some reviews that said something like, whoa, that deer story was crazy or something. So I'm guessing I'm probably right about that. But so yeah, these stories did nothing for me. I was unable to pay attention to them. I tried certain of them like multiple times, but you know, no matter how many times I listened to it, I just couldn't seem to pay attention to it or make anything of it. Some of them I fully understood. It's a type of deal where I felt like on a word level, I understood everything that I was listening to. On a sentence level, I could understand the sentence. But then on a textual level, I was like, yeah, I understand all of these different elements to it, but this does not make a story in my mind, or you know, you lost me somewhere along the line. It's the type of thing where I feel like there's a deeper layer, a deeper meaning, but I just wasn't seeing it. So I finished it. I got that prompt out of the way for Magical Readathon. Would I have picked this book up otherwise? No. Am I happy I picked it up? No. And then the final thing that I finished this month is A Master of Gin by P. Djeli Clark, making P. Djeli Clark instantly the most read author for me for this entire year. But I'm pretty sure, or I'm actually not sure that somebody will, yeah, maybe Cal Kate will like take over that role at some point, because I might reread many of their works. But so, A Master of Gin, the full-length novel in this that Gin universe, was a little bit of a disappointment, I gotta say. So I really, really love this world, and you know, in Master of Gin, that was still like the thing that really got me going through it, is the fact that I enjoyed this world building, enjoyed the steampunk element in combination with the Egyptian setting, and I just loved finding out more things about both this world and its history, because it's an alternate history where basically like Egypt is at the top of the world, because at some point in time somebody kind of like broke the space-time continuum, I want to refer to it, and then Jinn were let into the world, and then they helped kind of, you know, keep Egypt a independent nation and made it rise to the top in terms of the global scales. And I love all of that aspect to it. What I don't like is the plot. I don't like mystery thrillers. I don't like, and especially not detective stories. I don't know, I just don't care who does it. Something about it just makes me go like, okay, no. So I like the interaction between like the detective and sidekick, and that's also the case here. So I loved the interaction with Fatma and her new sort of like, she gets like what do you call that, like an assistant, not really, like somebody who's training assigned to her, and so she kind of has to navigate a partner role where up until this point she's always gone it solo, and I like that type of dynamic, and I liked it as well here. I enjoyed the interactions with her and Siti, but I enjoyed those to a lesser extent, I feel like, than I did in the Dead Gin in Cairo, because there we have like the start of this interaction, and here we're continuing and expanding, but you know, to some extent it just felt like the same at some points. But once again, mainly I like this world and finding out more about this world, and also when it comes to this world, there are certain characters within this book that have affiliations to the old gods of Cairo, or of Egypt, let's say, and I'm interested in that aspect a lot. Like, is that gonna come into play? Because I don't know, this is the first, I believe, officially, but I don't know like when or if we are necessarily getting a sequel, because I believe if this is going to become a series, it's mainly more going to be sort of like standalone detective cases, and the detective side of things doesn't interest me. So in the end, this is very much a meh bland read for me, because I will forget most things about this one, but I have to specify how much I do love this world building, and I wish I would have a story set in this world that does appeal to me. But I think what works well for me are the short stories within this world, because you do get that whole sort of world building and that atmosphere, but you just don't get much of that plot, you know, because of the fact that it's a smaller plot. I'm more able to enjoy it apparently. But so with that, my reading month was over. I did still read the majority of Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, which is also something that I on the spur of the moment picked up for Nevermore, but I didn't end up finishing it. I came back from Amsterdam, was super tired, managed to still finish A Master of Gin, then made the mistake of moving over to the bedroom in order to finish Our Wives Under the Sea in bed, and that didn't end up happening. I just kept on falling asleep. But so that will be in the May wrap up. But so yeah, with that, my TBR has gone down up until the point of the 1st of May. And actually, did I keep track of where I was? So it was 23 at the end of April. So 23 at the end of April. If you know where I was at the end of May, why are months so different? If you know where I was at the end of March, then you know what happened in April. So end of March, my TBR was down to 60. And end of April, my TBR is 23. So that's an addition of 7 books. And I can tell you that I bought more than 7. It's just that some of them I actually read in the month. So that number went down a little bit again. But so yeah, no comments. What happens in April stays in April, right? So moving on to May right now and moving on to another video. Hope you guys enjoyed this little wrap up for my April reading, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!